a friendly logo. Something like, that seems kind of cuddly, Call it something else. Don't call it total information awareness. Call it like the Kitten Surveillance Society or something, Really what you want is something that's sort of like friendly and colorful, something sort of playful that seems harmless, Something like this. Because these people got it right. If you go and you look about what it was that total information awareness was saying that they wanted to do, all the things that they wanted to collect and dump into one big pile for eternity, Google has done it all. In fact, they have exceeded what total information awareness wanted to do. And if we know, if there's one thing that Google is good at, it's developing the technology to make sense out of a whole bunch of information, to take a whole bunch of information, develop the profiles and the statistics on individual targets. So clearly Google's intent is different, right? They want to do something different than John Poindexter. They want to make money by selling ads, right? But make no mistake about it, they are in the surveillance business. That is what they do. They make money by surveilling people. And so the effect is the same, right? At the end of the day, what it was the TIA was trying to do and what Google is trying to do look almost identical. There's this question, right? Who knows more about the citizens in their own country? Kim Jong-il, the dictator of North Korea, or Google? I think it's probably Google, right? And so why is it that people were so scared of total information awareness and are so scared of people like Kim Jong-il who have these draconian surveillance systems, but not of Google? People freaked out when total information awareness was announced, but people don't really freak out about Google, more or less. I would say that, again, it comes down to choice. That there's this sort of illusion of a choice that you can participate or not participate. But once again, I would say that this choice is expanding. The choice of whether or not to use Google has increased from just whether or not you want unlimited storage from your email to something that's getting larger and larger to the point where it's going to be a choice of whether or not to participate in society. So I would say that the trends have changed. That what we're looking at now is technology which alters society, that it changes the actual social fabric of society, and that as a result, information accumulates in distinct places, and that the eavesdroppers just move to those points, the places where the information is already accumulating. Then in the past, there was these really direct attempts at acquiring information. Things like the Clipper chip, right, where they were actually trying to introduce surveillance equipment into every piece of consumer communications electronics. The present is much more subtle, right? Instead of doing that, they just moved to the few points where this telecommunications information actually accumulates. In the United States, that's not many places. There are rooms like room 641A, which is where the NSA has been operating a fiber optic splitter in the AT&T WorldCom facility. It's been ruled illegal 3 times now, and they're still doing it. The past was direct. You had things like total information awareness, where they're saying, we are going to take all of the data and put it into one big pile, and then we will mine what we want out of that. And the present is more subtle, that things like information tends to accumulate in places like Google, Twitter, Facebook, and that the eavesdroppers just move to those places. That it starts not with demanding, but soliciting your involvement. So when I'm thinking about the future, the first thing that I think I would like to sort of recognize and deal with is the choices that aren't really choices. To sort of identify these false choices that we're presented with of whether or not we're going to use a mobile phone or whether or not we're going to participate in Google. Because these things are becoming impossible, right? Like, what would happen if you just decided, I'm not going to email anyone with a Gmail account anymore, right? You would be cut out of the social narrative. You would be cut out of society, in a sense. So I think we have to acknowledge that these choices are expanding, and that in many ways they're becoming demands. So some projects that I've been sort of thinking about and working on in the slide are, first, I started thinking about Google, right? So what's up with Google? What is the problem we're trying to solve? What is it that we're trying, if we reject this false choice and we say it's actually impossible to just refuse to engage with Google, what is it that we want? Well, so the main problem, right, is that they have a lot of data. They record everything forever. They have your IP address, the cookie they issue you, all your search requests, the content of every email you've ever sent or received, the news you read, the places you go. They even keep your TCP headers. Now they're collecting like real-time GPS location information, and also now they're trying to get everybody's DNS lookups too. So they know who your friends are, they know where you live, they know where you work, they know how you spend your free time. They know about your health, your love life, your political leanings. In many ways, the information that they have probably paints a more complete picture of you than even your best friend would know. And the sort of scary thing is they not know just a lot about what you're doing, but they also have some insight into what you're thinking. And they've done a really, I mean, of course, Google's PR department is, diabolically brilliant, sort of unmatched in the world right now. And they've done a really good job of, as they've received some criticism, sort of controlling the debate by defining the terms, right? So now they're saying, we anonymize your data after 9 months. Well, what does that mean? It means they drop the last octet of your IP address after 9 months. So, what they've done is they're able to control the terms, right? They define what anonymity means. Anonymity means one last octet of your IP address. And so now they can say, oh, we're providing anonymous access. They also have done this really clever thing of introducing the privacy manager panel or whatever. Because they're sort of saying, okay, now we're giving users control over what it is that we collect about you. But the thing that's interesting is that they only show you some of the information that they sort of most obviously have about you. They don't show you any of the information that they could very easily correlate to you if they put any effort into it at all. Almost sort of most diabolically, they require you to have an account to participate in the privacy settings, right? So suddenly, if you're interested in privacy, it means you have to have a login and you have to maintain a consistent cookie with Google, which is pretty smart on their part. And lately they've slipped up a little bit. Eric Schmidt said if there's something you don't want anyone to know, maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place, which was sort of a big mistake. And so there's things that have been happening that have kind of revealed their motives a little bit better. And if there's one thing that we learned from the Aurora attacks on Google, it was that they were about intercept, or they were likely about intercept. That from the information that we have, it seems likely that we now know that law enforcement is running intercept systems on Google's networks. And not only that, but that there are other eavesdroppers without a legal backing who wanted access to those same intercept systems and likely succeeded. That as more and more information begins to accumulate in these places because of technology, that the eavesdroppers will move there, and even if they're eavesdroppers without a legal backing, we know that they always win, right? It's just a matter of how much time, money, or effort it takes. And that as more and more information ends up in these places, it's going to become more and more valuable, which means that it's more and more likely that someone is going to get access to it. So the project that I came up with to sort of respond to this was it's called Google Sharing. And the premise is that this scope of the sort of Google choice has become very large. And so we need an innovation that allows us to reject this false choice and also maintain anonymity while using Google, which means we sort of need some kind of anonymous access to Google services, which is both fast and reliable, that you can use all the time, day to day. And so the way that Google Sharing works is that it's two parts. It's a Firefox add-on and also a proxy server, the custom proxy server. And the add-on runs in your web browser, and it watches all of your normal requests. And for everything that isn't Google-bound, it just goes straight to the internet. It's totally unmolested. There's no performance implications. You get your full internet connectivity speed. If it sees something that's for a Google service which doesn't require a login, these are things like Google Search, Google News, Google Images, Google Products, but not things like Google Mail or Google Checkout, then it will siphon that traffic off, strip your Google cookie from the request, and forward it on to the Google Sharing proxy. The Google Sharing proxy maintains a pool of identities, where each identity is a cookie that's been issued by Google, as well as some unique user agent headers, or not just user agent, but HTTP headers. These are the things that are sort of like the fingerprint of a web browser, right? Your user agent header, what content encodings your web browser sends, that kind of thing. Each identity has sort of a unique fingerprint. And when a request comes into the Google Sharing proxy, the HTTP headers from the client are stripped off, and the headers from this identity are put on.